Who's been here once or twice before? Amazing. That is awesome. Thank you guys so much for your support. Round of applause for everyone for coming out. Thank you so much. Another quick poll. Who here is an entrepreneur? Who's doing something in the industry? Amazing. Who's an investor? Who's a secret investor? So whenever I ask who's an investor, no one raises their hands. And then Troy Dayton from ArcView came and I was like, who's an ArcView member? Which is by definition a subset of investors. We're getting people raise their hands right now. It's like, which is by definition, I get another one, like three right there. It's like 4. But by definition, you're a subset of the investors, and like 20 to 30 hands raised. I mean, maybe Troy is a better looking guy than I am. I don't know, but I know that the investors are out there. Entrepreneurs are often looking for capital. Investors often looking for companies and deal flow. And not just looking for capital in the case of entrepreneurs, obviously business partners, teammates, co-founders. So hopefully you'll get a chance to meet some of the other folks in the audience as you have already. And then this is sort of a breakdown of what the CannaGather audience looks like. It's mostly entrepreneurs, people who are in the industry or looking to break in the industry, people that are operating in the industry or looking to do so, maybe switch from one career and do the same function, but in the cannabis industry. Secondarily, investors and service providers. And so one exciting little game that we like to play is turn to the person to the left or right of you and talk to them for a minute or two and get to know them, and hopefully you can become best friends for life. So if you were here last month, you heard from Senator Liz Krueger, who's the lead sponsor of the MRTA. The MRTA is the adult use legalization bill in New York State. We're very excited about it. We have a very special guest to talk a little bit more about what we're doing to try to help push the cause of the MRTA tomorrow morning. So be sure to join us and check us out for that. And if you're interested in learning more about what happened in 2019 and what will hopefully happen in 2020 with cannabis legalization in New York State, go to CannaGather.com/October 2019. Dave in the back put together quite the nice video for you all to check out. And it's free, and nothing's better than free. So you should check it out, and you should learn. And it's actually Senator Krueger's birthday today. So happy birthday, Senator Liz Krueger. Round of applause for Senator Krueger. Happy birthday. One thing that you may know, if you've been here before, is that you can be on the host committee. You bring a couple of your friends. It's a 4-pack. And you get an awesome gift from Jenny, from Jenny's Baked at Home. You get olive oil, which is awesome. And it's also an infused olive oil. Not that type of infused, but CBD infused. So it's sort of legal. But if you're concerned about the legality, you should have come last month, and we can talk about that more. But it's awesome. So if you're interested in CBD, the intersection of CBD and food, talk to Jenny, who's right there. And if you're interested in CannaGather and have at least 3 friends, or 2, you can get a 4-pack for 3 people. It's more of a donation at that point, but get a VIP 4-pack. And thank you to Mitch Kulik and his group, who's sitting over there. So thank you so much. Round of applause for them. And then obviously CannaGather couldn't be done without the entire CannaGather New York team. Everyone who's up there has played an integral role in making this event happen. So I just want to thank them, and let's give them one more round of applause. Thank you. So before we get started, joins us at the after party. So at the after party, we get free pizza at Ribalta for anyone who's been there before. It's amazing pizza. It's about a block and a half that way. So join us. We usually stay until around 11, maybe 12, basically until they kick us out. We actually leave. Last time we left before some of the employees, after some of the employees left. But the pizza's delicious, and it's awesome, so come hang with us. And then be sure to grab your early bird ticket, which is $5 cheaper than your non-early bird ticket, at CannaGather.com/December 2019. We'd like to thank our sponsors. So the Blinc group, obviously, you'll hear more from Arnaud, who's arguably the world's expert in vaping. We'll hear from him in a little bit. And thank you to Sasha, his co-founder, who's also here, and everyone from the Blinc team. Cole Shots. Do we have someone from Cole Shots? I didn't see someone. You want to come on up? Oh, there they are. Hey, Mark, you want to come up? No, you don't. Round of applause for Cole Shots. He was hiding. So Cole Shots is a leading law firm, national law firm. They've been a longtime sponsor of CannaGather. They're a full-service law firm, and I'm not a lawyer, so I'll let a lawyer do the talking.
Yeah, well, this is a new crowd for me. I've been out of the box for a couple of weeks. I have a new hip here.
Oh, congratulations.
And I definitely could have used some stuff to deal with the pain, but it was all up in Vermont. But anyway,
olive oil?
I'm not sure that was strong enough.
We'll talk to Jenny. We'll make it up.
Yes. But anyway, it's interesting times. This industry is in flux. It could use a shot in the arm. It could certainly use some type of legalization in New Jersey, New York. And so, we're all sort of having to rethink and regroup and be more flexible, in what we do, valuations, availability of capital, and, beginning to focus, as people are finding out. Profits are important here. Companies have been able to raise a lot of money and burn through a lot of capital, but what we're finding out, growth for the mere sake of growth can lead to some real problems. And hopefully we'll turn that corner soon and things will start picking up again. Sorry to be a bit of a downer here, but Arnaud, you can.
It's all upside from here. It's all upside from here. Thank you, Mark, from Cole Shots. And we want to call up a duo. Gene Sullivan, whose birthday was the 16th? When was your birthday, Gene? The 16th. Oh, got it right. So round of applause, happy birthday to Gene Sullivan. And our partner, Jeff Finkel from ArcView.
Thank you, Josh. Did you know that more than $22 billion was invested just the last 2 years? And did you know that more than 600 merger and acquisition transactions have happened? Are you going to miss this? I'm not missing anything. Because one way I play is part of the ArcView group. We want to invite you. Please join us if you want to see some incredible companies. And we put on many fantastic events. Josh, would you agree? The New York event was great. And if anyone else was there, thank you for joining us, because we just had our first Manhattan event in October. So here's what's great. We're really enhancing what's happening at ArcView by bringing a wide variety of investment platforms to the members in many different ways. And here to tell you about that is my business partner, Jeff Finkel, who I've known a long time. So Jeff, take it away.
Thank you. First of all, how lucky am I now to be able to work with Gene Sullivan?
Thank you.
How many in the audience know Gene Sullivan?
Thank you.
How many in the audience know me? There you go. There you go. So look, I'm really excited to be joining Gene in the asset management group of ArcView. We have a lot of interesting things planned. I'm not going to go over the laundry list tonight. I will call attention to one of the vehicles that I think will be important, and that is our member-managed venture fund. It is simply a fund in every respect. There are limited partners and general partners, but our limited partners are our general partners. So each person in the fund is part of the decision-making process for the fund. How great would it be to be the GP of your own fund? Pretty great if you're interested in investing. So we've rolled this out already, and now we are transitioning it to the ArcView group, and you folks will hear more about that entity and our broader fund strategy as it develops over the next few months. So if you're interested in hearing more about it, I'm going to be here for the whole night. Happy to talk one-on-one. But I think as a group, you'll hear more about what our plans are as they come out. So thank you.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. Couple pieces of news. So today was a very difficult day to get any work done, as anyone who has an internet connection can attest. There's a lot going on in a magical place called Washington, D.C. The ambassador to the EU was doing his little impeachment hearing thing, which apparently was very important. But more importantly, get it? A bill to deschedule cannabis had a hearing in a House subcommittee led by a man named Jerry Nadler, who represents this district. And that bill passed in the House subcommittee. And again, round of applause. That bill deschedules cannabis, which means it legalizes cannabis, which is pretty cool. In addition to just legalizing it, it creates a pretty strong and substantive framework for equity. It's arguably right now the holy grail in terms of legislation that's going on down in DC, and it just passed the House subcommittee today. So one more round of applause. Very exciting times in this industry and for the movement. The New York Attorney General filed a lawsuit. Tish James filed a lawsuit against Juul for misleading marketing claims, which is obviously very timely, given that that's what we'll be talking about in part tonight. Not necessarily the vaping side, the tobacco side of the nicotine side of vaping, but just vaping more broadly. And then if you read the leaflet, which is written by Justin, who's here somewhere with his dad, Justin from the CannaGather team, the leaflet is a weekly newsletter that we're putting together, and by we, I mean Justin, is putting together some of the best and most interesting pieces of news from around the industry, from different facets like entrepreneurship, investing, medical, law. And one piece of news that I thought was pretty fascinating was that there was a study done over in Pennsylvania that showed, a scientific medical study that was done that showed that there was a decrease in opioid consumption for patients that were given CBD. So Mark, we can have another double-blind study, I guess, with just you. But I thought this was particularly interesting, especially in the context of the opioid epidemic that is ravaging our country, and some of the questions around how effective is CBD versus placebo, and I guess it works. So definitely check out the leaflet and check out that study for more information. And then one thing that's sort of a no news update is that there hasn't been any traction, unfortunately, with the Safe Banking Act. For those of you who are familiar, it gives cannabis businesses access to financial services and ultimately some parts of capital markets. And unfortunately, we haven't heard anything from Senator Crapo or Mitch McConnell, Majority Leader McConnell, on the Safe Banking Act. It obviously passed the House with 300 plus votes, 100 or so, I think it was 92 Republicans. It could be off somewhere between 90 and 100 Republicans supported that bill in the House, but unfortunately we haven't seen any public traction for SAFE in the Senate, which is obviously important. So that's something to keep an eye on. A couple more sponsors I'd like to thank. I'd like to thank MGO and LO. MGO is a leading accounting firm. They're actually CannaGather's accounting firm. And LO, which is a strategic advisory and other professional services for basically pretty much anything that your company may need. So be sure to check out the team from MGO and LO who's here. Wilson Elser. Wilson Elser is another leading law firm. Working with them on a project that I'll hopefully be able to unveil next month. And if you were here last month, you know that I said that last month. But it's not their fault, it's mine, I promise. It's cool, it's awesome, I hope, I think, we'll see, we'll find out, TBD. But Wilson Elser is cool. So one thing that I always mention is that if you're looking for, if you're starting a company or you're involved in a company, you really need good professional service providers. I know that from personal experience, excruciating personal experiences. And so I'm honored that we have two amazing law firms that are partnering with us, Cole Schatz and Wilson Elser. So be sure to speak with the Wilson Elser team as well. Hub International, we're going to call up Wayne Margulies from Hub International. I don't see him which often happens, but I'll give the pitch for him. Any sort of insurance needs. So again, on the theme of professional service providers, and not a lot of folks are playing in this space. It definitely was a challenge for us when we were looking. So Wayne is over by the cafe. So if you're looking to speak with Hub International, speak with Wayne. Tell him I sent you, and I guess we'll get him up on stage next time. And then let's call up Matt from THCX, which is round of applause. Yeah, round of applause. Let's do it. I said Matt because there's 3 of them. So.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. Josh. Matt Markevich. I run a cannabis exchange-traded fund that listed on the New York Stock Exchange in July. It's a portfolio of 34 companies that operates in the legal cannabis industry, and that extends beyond seed-to-sale stories. We have various sub-themes included in the portfolio, some biotech companies, ancillary service companies, as well as companies that focus more on international cannabis markets. We have a little table over there with some fact sheets in the cafe. Please see me during the event or get to us through our website, thcxetf.com. And as Josh mentioned, we have a couple representatives floating around the audience tonight. Thanks.
Thank you so much. But the great thing is that they're all named Matt. There's at least 3 Matts, and there may be more people from the team, but at least 3 Matts. So thank you to all the Matts, and thank you to Matt for coming up and sharing and partnering with us on this. A couple final ones. BDS Analytics. So if you are looking for data about what's going on in the legal markets, BDS Analytics has access to a lot of that data, and it's pretty fascinating. For any of you who were here about 3 years ago at CannaGather, 2 years ago at CannaGather, we had the CEO, and he walked through some of his content, and it was sort of mind-blowing. It was a 72-page deck. It was long, but it was fascinating. So if you're interested in the world of data for what's selling and what's not selling in terms of modalities, in terms of brands, check out BDS Analytics. They have various white papers. Hello Convo. So some of you may have known that we've officially become micro-influencers on Instagram, which I think is just by virtue of having more than 10,000 followers. And that was largely thanks to Hello Convo. So if you're interested in Instagram and other social media management, be sure to check them out. Splash is our event platform. So if you bought a ticket, you came through Splash. So thanks, Splash. Trust Capital, if you're looking for funding, if you're an early stage company, funding or support, not necessarily funding, but funding and or support, Trust Capital, definitely speak with David Hess, longtime partner for us. Urba Verde Group, who apparently has a lot of interesting news to discuss at some point, which I will hopefully find out soon. But they are a cultivator in 3 different states, I think, around the country, on the THC and the hemp and CBD side. And B&B Bank, which somehow provides banking services to the cannabis industry. Still don't know how. If you find Peter, Peter can help you bank. If you can't find Peter, email me and I will introduce you. But Peter offers banking services, which sort of goes back to the safe comment, which I'll sort of go on a mini rant, which is that banking, the inability to access banking for cannabis is somewhat of a myth insofar as there are many companies that have access to financial services. They're mostly like the big ones that have longstanding relationships and trust with some of those providers, rightfully so. And so thank you to folks like Peter for providing access to financial services, which is unsurprisingly very important to running a company. And hopefully the Safe Banking Act will pass sometime soon. If you go to CannaGather.com, you'll see that we operate in multiple places. New York, LA, Orange County actually has an event right now, depending on the time difference. No, in an hour it starts. In Denver, in Baltimore, in Connecticut, and a couple other places we're sort of off and on, and in a couple other places we're getting started soon, like Detroit. If you know anyone in Detroit, send them my way. So go to CannaGather.com, and you'll see the calendar for the rest of the year. One thing that's not on there, because it's not our event, but MJBiz is going to be a sponsor of ours for the night. In particular, you can grab $50 off with CannaGather 50. So MJBiz, as you probably know, is the biggest event in the industry. They're projecting 36,000 people, which is a lot. It was 27 or 28,000 last year, I believe. It's in Las Vegas. So if you use code CannaGather 50, you'll get $50 off, and the prices go up $300. And then we're going to give away one ticket to someone in this audience as well, if you're interested and so inclined. So thank you to MJBiz for that, and hope to see you in Vegas. So next month, we'll have State Senator Diane Savino. For all of you who know, State Senator Savino has been a longtime champion for cannabis. She was the lead sponsor for the Compassionate Care Act, which was the infrastructure for the medical bill that currently exists in New York State. And she's also been a vocal advocate for adult use as well. Pun somewhat intended on the vocal. It was sort of a secondhand thing. It's in my head. We'll get to you in a second. Senator Savino is going to be coming and talking about some of the stuff that we discussed with Senator Krueger last month, and some more from her perspective, given her longstanding experience and insight and involvement and support of the industry and this movement. Also, some of you may know, we may or may not have Congressman Nadler, who is the lead sponsor of the MORE Act in the House. Senator Kamala Harris in the Senate is the lead sponsor there. So we may have Congressman Nadler. We may not. Apparently, they're doing this other thing in D.C. called the impeachment that they think may extend through the week of the 16th, which includes the 17th, which is our date. So this is sort of a disclaimer, may not happen. But I guess let's just hope that the process wraps quickly, because in addition to Congressman Nadler, we have other members of Congress, one from the House and one from the Senate. So I personally am hoping that the process wraps up smoothly, depending on your views, whether it goes one way or the other. Let's just all cross our fingers and hope that Congressman Nadler and the other members, elected representatives, come to CannaGather on the 17th. But either way, we'll have Senator Savino, who is awesome in her own right. So there's something very important going on tomorrow, and I want to call up a very special guest. He's getting Instagram ready. So as you may know, CannaGather has been part of the Start Smart Coalition, and one of the leaders of that group has been Vocal New York. Vocal is an organization that you'll hear from in a second, but they have driven probably more people to get involved in the support for cannabis legalization in New York State than probably all the other groups combined in terms of physical bodies, people going to Albany and getting involved. And so I've sort of seen this on the sidelines without sort of communicating that to Juwanza, but I've been incredibly, incredibly both impressed and thankful for the work that he's doing. And he'll sort of share with you what's going on tomorrow. So thank you, Juwanza.
Thank you for being here. I deeply appreciate it. So just like 2 minutes. So my name is Juwanza James Williams. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the director of organizing at Vocal New York. It's a grassroots membership organization that's been around 20 years, committed to building political power among low-income people impacted by HIV/AIDS, mass incarceration, homelessness, and the drug war, and therefore to end hepatitis C and the overdose crisis. And we are involved in the Start Smart New York campaign to pass the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, the MRTA, held by Liz Krueger and Crystal Peoples-Stokes in the Assembly, because we want to build an economy and a democracy that reflects the needs of everyday New Yorkers, and not just people in industry, but people who have been impacted by the failed racist and classist drug war and marijuana prohibition for the last 40 years. So I think I'm preaching to the choir here, but folks should know, we have an opportunity right now in this state to do marijuana legalization the right way, to do it in a way that has the ability and the nuance to hold the unique complexities of this particular plant, used as a medicine, used for recreation, used for a wide range of ways that will create all manner of industry for people to engage in. But the reality is that I want to specifically talk about the sort of racial and economic emphasis that the MRTA has on legalization in New York State. Primarily, I want to mention that the MRTA blocks vertical integration. That means that massive corporations cannot come into this state and control the entire market, which means there's space for folks like you in this room to be able to participate in this system. And the second piece, the most important piece to me, is how do we generate the kind of revenue in this state to address some of the bigger issues that we're experiencing? Right now in New York City and in New York State, there's 94,000 people right now living in shelters across this entire state. And that takes a lot of money, a lot of revenue for us to be able to solve that kind of crisis. The issue of homelessness is as political as locking children away at the border, separating them from their families. It is political as gun violence. It is political as using the drug war as a vehicle to facilitate mass incarceration in this country, with marijuana or cannabis being one of the primary drivers of this phenomena. And what the MRTA does is that it responds to this reality. It responds to a large number, a wide range, a comprehensive understanding of the crises that have been connected to marijuana. So tomorrow, after we waged one of the most powerful campaigns in New York State history to legalize marijuana the right way, it was truly remarkable. We did not win, despite there being wide range, overwhelming support all across the state. And the reason that did not happen, in my opinion, is because the people with the most power in this state government did not agree with the idea that we should create a market for marijuana distribution that responded to the racist and classist legacies of marijuana prohibition. So they didn't want any tax revenue that was generated to go back into the hardest hit communities. And we say no to that. So tomorrow, we are going to City Hall, take the 456 train to City Hall, Brooklyn Bridge, at 11:30 a.m., and we're going to gather to call on Governor Cuomo, to call on the legislature, to call on all those who are conscientious in this state, who have a vested interest in the legalization of marijuana with the considerations of the impacts of prohibition, and who want to end the failed racist and classist drug war, to call for that MRTA to be passed. So I'm asking each and one of you in this room right now, if you have the capability to tomorrow meet us at City Hall at 11:30 a.m., I'm calling on you to tweet out tomorrow, tweet out tonight, hashtag marijuana justice, hashtag MRTA, do the right thing. Let's get this done in 2020. We do not have time for elected officials. We do not have time for a public debate about very critical issues. The drug war is failed. It's over. It's done. It does not work. It costed us $1 trillion, and it's costed us thousands and thousands of lives and the destruction of many, many families. So I'm asking all of you to join this fight, to join the Start Smart New York Coalition, to join us to call for a greater New York, to call for legalization in a way that has not been seen in this country, because we can do it today. And I'm here, so talk to me. Thank you.
Well done. So when I say that they bring people, I mean by the busload, to Albany, which is far. So if you're in this room, you're probably somewhat interested in the cannabis industry and passionate about it. So if you don't want to come to Albany, come tomorrow. And yes, it says noon tomorrow, but that's when it starts. So come at 11:30 or 11, depending on how good you are at showing up on time. Show up. It actually makes a difference. And I'll admit that I used to think, I'll let Normal do it, I'll let DPA do it, I'll let MPP do it, and they'll handle it, they got it covered. And they do a good job, don't get me wrong. But we all need to get involved, and we all need to show up. We need to tweet, which apparently makes a difference. as you'll find out in like an upcoming slide. Like apparently they care. Like apparently like some of the staffers have like TweetDeck open in like elected officials' offices, and they like actually care about like what people are tweeting at them, which like makes sense as to why Donald Trump is our president, because it seems like in some weird way he's become the king of Twitter. So like actually like show up and tweet. I mean, I like don't even use Twitter anymore, but like I do it like for this purpose. So it's like, get involved. It actually makes a difference. I know it's like weird and also like annoying and frustrating because it's politics, but it helps. So thank you for doing all the amazing work that you do, and also the success with which you've created from the work that you've done. And I hope to see you. I'll definitely be there. Which is why I invited him, because I was like, we need to get more people. So I hope that you'll join me tomorrow at 11:30 so that we start on time at noon tomorrow at City Hall. So I've made a small addendum to this slide, which is take out your phone, take a picture, share with friends, but also tweet to the governor. Like literally right now, I am going to take a picture and tweet, assuming that I'm able to log into Twitter, which I fortunately am able to. I think you need. Yeah, I think you need to go to like the browser, open up the browser. Often, like Wi-Fi hacks. Sometimes I just go to 1:1:1:1, and then sometimes it takes you to the login screen. Sometimes it takes you to the website. And yeah, just tweet like, at NY.gov Cuomo, would love to have you speak. Getting a lot of MJBiz emails, so I see you. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Like apparently, like elected officials really care about outreach, and showing up in person means a lot, and social media helps a little bit as well. And so without further ado, I'd like to call to the stage the co-founder and co-CEO of the Blinc Group, Arnaud, who is, in my view, the world expert on vaping and vapor products, given that he is the chairman of the ISO, I thought I had it up there. He is the chairman of the ISO Committee on Vapor Products.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for coming in, and thank you, Josh, for having me here to speak. I just want to start with really one last thing before diving into the vaping crisis. I think it was your birthday yesterday?
Monday.
Monday. So just want to wish you a very happy birthday, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for being here. Obviously, the vaping crisis, we've all been hearing a lot about it in the past few months. I'm happy to say the cases and the occurrences are slowly dying down. No pun intended. This vaping crisis has been a wake-up call for the industry, has been a wake-up call for the general public, and most importantly, has been a wake-up call for the regulators, which we'll speak about a little bit later.
So I guess, so I know you. I've known you for about 2.5, maybe 3 years now. Very impressed with your company and you and Sasha and the whole team. The office is very nice as well. If you guys have ever been.
Too
Pretty cool.
expensive.
They host parties. Could you introduce yourself for people in the room who maybe haven't met you in person before?
So, as you can see, I am French. I usually start a lot of my conferences speaking like this, and then I just switch back to proper American English, and people are relieved, and they actually listen to me afterwards. So, as I know a lot of people in the room here, I didn't think I was going to start like that. Let me start with a story. How has vaping been around? I'm happy to say that I quit smoking in 2009, thanks to vaping. It was a very fortunate incident. My wife saw an ad on Groupon for something that was named an electronic cigarette. It was really one of the first models. And we ordered it. And I got it at home, and within the 10 minutes it took me to fill that cartridge, it was the former C4 cartridges, for those of you who know nicotine vaping a little bit. It was one of the first versions. I quit smoking and haven't smoked since. So seeing how this product was able to help in quitting smoking, I made a very simple business move. I called a couple of friends of mine in China, because I saw it was made in China, and I asked them, how much does this cost to manufacture? A couple of days later, they come back, they tell me it's $4. It was sold 60 euros in Paris at the time. So obviously it was a perfect business occasion, and I rallied around two buddies of mine that I play rugby with, and we created a company called Ego Cigarette. I don't know, for those of you who know vaping, you all probably know what an Ego battery is, and that's how it came to be. And over time, and seeing how the impact on people's lives. From completely quitting smoking, you get your taste back. You are able to go running again without being out of breath. You can sleep next to your spouse without smelling their hair that smells like tobacco. These very simple things made me a firm believer and a hard advocate for vaping. Now, I am never going to say that vaping is the safest product. Obviously, you should never put anything in your lungs. But I'm going to tell you a little story. We did a test with someone who was vaping in a room back in 2014, in a clean room, vaping for 1 hour on taking about 4-second puffs every 5 minutes for that hour. And we had another person walking in the streets of Paris. We measured a lot of the toxic substances that they were inhaling. The person who was walking in the streets of Paris had 7 times more toxic substances in his body than the person who was vaping in a clean room. And obviously we put that out in the media, and Big Tobacco and Big Pharma were very quick to shut it down. But that made a huge impact in the way vaping has evolved in Europe. So a little bit more about how we're here is, throughout the years and the past 10 years, we've become kind of at experts between the crossroads of regulation, of product development, of research, and technology. So trying to rein all of that in is why we are here right now with the Blinc Group. I met my partner, Sasha, who's in the room. I can't see anything from here, so I don't know where he is over there. 2 years ago, Sasha was CEO of a company called Brand Labs New York, probably one of the best branding strategists I've ever seen in my entire life, and decided to help me launch the #1 French e-liquid brand that was in the US. So after working for a year together, we quickly realized that we had a lot in common, and started seeing a lot of people come to us with THC vaping devices. And looking at these devices, these were devices that we were using in nicotine vaping 7 years ago that had toxic emissions. So we quickly realized that we needed to do something about this, because this vaping crisis would be 10 times bigger if the industry didn't understand that they should not be using, for instance, cotton wicks. So really kind of trying to understand the relationship between that oil as opposed to e-liquid with nicotine, and all of the byproducts that can be found in those emissions. During that entire discovery process, I was lucky enough to be nominated as chairman of the ISO standards on vaping products. Quick refresher on what ISO standards are. There are 126 countries that are members of the ISO standards committees, and each country has their own representation. Here in the US, it's an organism called ANSI. In France, it's AFNOR. In the UK, it's BSI. And once a committee is created to work on a certain product, whether it's child's toys, whether it's bottles, whether it's mugs, whether it's phones, you absolutely have to have representatives of the general public, of the government, and of the industry. A lot of people tend to think standards are made by the industry. That is not true. Standards that are made by the industry are worth nothing. Now, since each country member of ISO has those three bodies represented, all of the standards are approved by government, are approved by the users, by the consumers, and are approved by the industry. And this is a very, very important notion. On the Mirror Committee in the US, the FDA sits on that committee. The FDA approves, even if a lot of the time they just don't say anything, but the fact that they don't say anything in standards language means that it's approved. So I just wanted to clarify that so you really understand what ISO standards are. Along with that, being French, of course, I took the chair of the European Commission on Vaping Products and have been lobbying for harm reduction for the past 6 or 7 years. So that was a very long answer, but I think it was important for everyone in the room to understand that.
So, I mean, I think that cannabis vaping and nicotine vaping are different, but given your background and then your point about harm reduction is what are your thoughts when people say, and I think you touched on it already about, you shouldn't breathe anything that's, I guess, not beneficial to you, namely oxygen and other compounds in air. What are your thoughts? Unpack what quote unquote harm reduction means to you in the context of smoking and vaping.
So harm reduction is, and I'm going to take a very extreme example, and I'm going to take the French numbers because I know them by heart, but they're comparable in the US. There are 73,000 people that die from tobacco every year in France. In the grand scheme of things, if we only have 10,000 people that die from vaping, is that still not a better public health policy to have than to have those 73,000 people? And I'm being very, very, very cynical here, but I really believe that harm reduction is about making sure that people are going to do things. They're going to do it their own way. Your children, they're all going to try to light a cigarette at 13 or 14. Stop trying to think that they won't do it. They're all going to have a joint. They're all going to get drunk and go out binge drinking. That's going to happen to everyone at least once. Fortunately, a lot of the times it happens once and it doesn't happen a lot afterwards. But it's very, very important to understand that they are going to do it. And I think that is what a lot of the regulators, what a lot of our government officials, and what a lot of people can't comprehend. Now, if they're going to do it on a scale from 1 to 10 with a product that has a toxicity of 9, then why not give them the opportunity, since they're going to do it anyway, of doing it on a product that's going to have a toxicity of 2? And this has been scientifically proven over the past 10 years. Now, one of the biggest things that we hear, and one of the biggest objections, is we don't have long-term studies. So what are we going to do? Wait 20 years before putting out an innovation and have another 73,000 people die every year? No, we have to help the industry grow. And I think this is where we reach a main difference between the tobacco industry and the cannabis industry. The cannabis industry can't do research, at least here in the US, can't do research. We can't do clinical trials. We can't do any of this. So how does the regulator expect us to be like a pharma company that does 10 years of studies before putting out a drug? We're not even allowed to do a 1-week study. So it's really, really important to understand that dynamic and why I'm going to say some of the things I'm going to say moving forward. There's one thing that we have been pushing with the Blinc group for the past 2 years, and essentially since the creation of the Blinc group, is why are we measuring what's in here and not what's coming out? Because what's coming out is what people are putting in their lungs. And there are changes. There is a mathematical model of vaporization, which is an equation that took us 2.5 years to create, and that has been validated at the ISO level, that has 50 different variables. That means there are 50 different factors that can influence the vapor. Imagine when you have 50 different factors and 50 different oils, what the mix can be. It is very, very important to understand that the vapor, and essentially vapor is a wrong term, it's a layman's term, what's coming out of this is aerosol. That aerosol can contain toxic substances that are not detectable in the oil. And we've seen this over a lot of R&D testing, that products that test for mycobutanil, for instance, in the oil that test not detected, you can see some of those compounds and some of those contaminants and VOCs that come out in the emissions in the form of cyanide. This happens, and we have to understand it as an industry. We really need to know this. And I mean, I have a lot of other stories I can tell about this, but moving forward, what are we going to be looking at? A lot of players in our industry use MCT. And I think this is a very simple notion to understand. MCT is coconut oil. Everyone says it's FDA approved. Okay, great. First of all, FDA approved does not exist. It's certified, manufactured in an FDA approved facility, or it's on a list of products that you can use. Second, it's used for cutaneous use. So you have all the levels of your skin that are there to eliminate all the contaminants in MCT, in coconut oil. It's approved for ingestion because you have enzymes that can break it down in your stomach. Does anyone say it was approved for inhalation, for vapology? No. No one has. No research has been done. There is very, very little research on any kind of compounds that allow us to understand that it's going to be completely safe for inhalation. We started doing this a little bit in Europe. Let me tell you the story about strawberry flavoring. Strawberry flavoring has 11 molecules inside. One of those produces contaminants when you heat it too high. All we have to do is take that molecule out, and then we can say it is vapology grade because we have studies on all the other molecules. Do you think the people who are putting strawberry flavor and selling strawberry flavor are doing that? 2 companies in the world are doing it because they understand it. Now, this sounds very alarming, but we have ways to mitigate this. We understand how this works. At the ISO level, we have created standard protocols to measure at least the very basic contaminants. Volatile organic compounds, nitrosamines, TSNAs, which there shouldn't be in cannabis, but you can still see there are when there's combustion. There are a lot of products that we can measure that we know are dangerous. We can do that base level and allow the research to move on. No one knows if, for instance, myrcene, in 5 years, someone's going to stumble upon a contaminant when you heat myrcene above a certain level, because we're not allowed to do research. Once we'll be able to have that base of research, we'll be able to make full medical claims. Right now, it is dangerous to make medical claims, even if you're in the medical space and you're approved for it. It is dangerous. Now, there's also another aspect to understand, is since these standards exist, why has no one been using them? For the past 2 years, I've been meeting with labs, all the biggest labs in cannabis. And the first question I asked them, do you guys have a puffing machine? What do you mean a puffing machine? What's that for? Well, that's to test the emissions. Oh, we don't need to do that. The regulator's not asking for it. So you really think that the regulator is not going to harp on this in 2 or 3 years? That's just nonsense. We need to be forward thinkers. We need to understand exactly what we're doing. If not for ethical sakes, for legal sakes. So you're not being held liable for something that you didn't know was happening. And this is just common business sense. Now, when you look at all of these products that we see on the market, it is it's mind-boggling because these products are put out because of the consumer. This is a consumer-driven industry. We're at an inflection point where it has to be an industry-driven industry. Why is it in cannabis, cannabis and nicotine vaping, the only two industries, proper industries, large industries, where no one is required to do any research before putting a product on the market? What if you want to create a new drug for headaches? It's going to take you 10 years to bring it to market. Now, we don't necessarily need to go into that extreme, but we have tools at our disposal that exist right now that would allow us to make safer products. And going back to my example of all these labs, it's mind-boggling. No one understands this. And finally, with this vaping crisis, and I was very mad to see that USA Today quoted me in one of their articles. The first thing they said, Arnaud is happy for this vaping crisis. It was kind of weird PR move, especially since there were like 2 other paragraphs of all the science-based results I was giving. But it's true. This vaping crisis is a wake-up call. And unfortunately, it's happening on black market, which we can't control, and you have states like Massachusetts who are banning it, which makes no sense because that's just going to feed the black market even more. Instead of coming up with sensible regulation that already exists. We're not reinventing the wheel here. It's like when you put a new food product on the market, you have to test it for salmonella. Why shouldn't we be testing for nitrosamines in vaping products? All the methods already exist. Everyone has been using them. All the labs have been using them. The big labs, not the cannabis labs, of course. So it's really important to understand how all of this comes into play, and not to mention that we're looking also at different protocols. I'm sure this has happened to people here in the room where you're sending the exact same batch, you're sending it to two labs, and you get 2 different results. The exact same batch. Why? Because they're using their own protocols. There is no unified protocols, which is weird because those protocols exist. How to use GCMS to measure heavy metals. Those are ISO protocols that have existed for 20 years. Every other industry uses them. Why not cannabis? One of the key answers here is what I said just before, is we are a consumer-led industry. We need to grow up and face this vape crisis with very strict decisions. That's it. No, you don't have to applaud if you don't want to.
That was very intense.
I'm sorry, I can go on and on and on about this for like hours. So,
But I guess that's the point. To your point, it's a wake-up call, and obviously no one wants to see anyone get hurt, let alone die. So it's not good. But hopefully there are things that we can learn from this. You said something myrcene. Is that a terpene?
Yeah.
So there's, I guess, a couple things that you said that I'd like to unpack. So in terms of the things that we might be able to learn from this vaping crisis, I mean, obviously standardization and testing, like sensible policy. And so you mentioned the Massachusetts policy for one, and as you may know, I think I brought it up at a previous CannaGather. Governor Cuomo tried to ban flavored vapes in New York State, and he was unsuccessful in doing so because of Arnaud. So do you want to share a little bit more about that and what the logic was and your thoughts in terms of how to craft sensible policy?
Well, I really think the proof is in the data. Ask any vapor who switched from smoking to vaping what flavor they're using. And there's a lot of research on this over the past few years. 75% of the people are using fruity flavors. Adults using fruity flavors. Yet we're paying, as an industry, the mistakes of some sick companies who are taking the Frosted Flakes Tiger and making frosted vapes, marketing to kids. And I see this in the cannabis industry happening right now. That's going to bite us in the ass moving forward.
By the way, I have a lot of views on cereal, let alone like the vapes, but that's a separate conversation.
Yeah, I remember my parents, when I was a kid, I used to live in the US, that's why I speak English like this, and my parents were against me having anything that's not naturally colored. Like, how could you be eating blue Fruit of the Loops? That's weird.
I mean, delicious, but...
And yeah, I can go on on and on about this as well. Why the
Sorry,
hell is
you needed to
raspberry?
say that.
Why the hell is raspberry blue in the U.S.?
You don't have blue raspberry in France?
I don't know. It's just weird. And why can we not have foie gras here? It's the best damn meal.
As a vegetarian, there was a New York Times article, and the chef was like, what are they going to do next? Ban veal? I was like, that's a great idea. But this is about cannabis.
So you know that being vegetarian, you know that New York tap water has millions and billions of shrimp in it. I'm just saying.
It's a long conversation. Took me 3 years to cut out shrimp, and I'm Jewish, so you would think that it was by birth, but took me a long time. But yes, it's not a perfect science or art.
No, definitely.
It actually kind of sucks a lot. So you don't have to remind me on that front. But I think we were talking about Frosted Flakes, vaping edition.
No, so just going back to these basic good marketing practices. I mean, we all obviously are attracted to He-Man, are attracted to stuff that we looked at and that we were watching when we were kids. That's not a reason to use it in cannabis. There's a prime example. Everything you're hearing in the media about Juul and marketing to kids and marketing to teenagers is completely skewed. Disclaimer here, the Juul founders are my friends, and I've worked with them in the past.
Small disclaimer. You never gave me that disclaimer.
But they have never marketed to kids. Like all these other vaping companies that do Frosted Flakes, they've always had a pack. It's a pill pack. It looks 100% medical. It doesn't even have an image of fruit on it. Those are all the knockoffs that come from China and other manufacturers. Now, a little known, and I like telling the story about this, is how did Juul get so big compared to all the other vaping products? They got so big for one reason: their distribution channel. They are the first that figured out how to get distributed in C-stores. Now, I urge any one of you here to do the test. When you're walking in the streets of New York, in the Triborough area, there are 6,900 smoke shops. So go to any one of those, find a kid that's 14 years old, give him $20 and say, hey, can you go buy me Juul pods? I've done it at least 10 times in the past year. Every single time that kid comes out with a pack of Juul pods. Every single time. Now do the same test. Tell him to go into a vape shop. 6 out of 10 times, the kid doesn't even get through the door because you're carded. And the 4 other times, he gets to the counter, he gets carded, and then he has to go out. Juul, and I'm sorry to say this because there's no other way of putting it, was screwed by their distribution channel. Now, the reason I'm saying this is when I see all of these CBD brands, all of these under 0.3% THC brands go into C-stores. Think about that. Think about how you're going to be marketing those products. Think about how they're being marketed. And you'd be surprised at the impact that can have. Again, Juul, their success, their financial success was C-stores, but it's also their demise. Would you be rather worth $20 billion or $2 billion and continue growing? It's very, very important. Every single thing that we do, every single act, every single contract we sign, every single distribution agreement we sign will have an impact in the future. And that's also one of the reasons that it's kind of mind-boggling when we hear about this vaping crisis, that it's nicotine. This is just a vendetta by certain politicians, by Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, by a lot of these organizations that have been trying to get vaping banned since its inception. And I think it's really, really important to understand where that comes from and understand why these products, and most importantly, why the Juul is accessible to so many kids. It's not Juul. Of course, I'm not saying they're 100% clean on this, but it's mostly their distribution channels. One other thing on the vaping crisis, and vaping has been used, and over Europe, in more than half the countries, is reimbursed by Social Security when you switch from smoking to nicotine vaping. My insurance in France gives me 65 euros a year to change my vaping device. And my premium is 25% less. Why is it this is the only country in the world where, one, there's an epidemic, there's a crisis, and where the government thinks that vaping is more harmful than tobacco? Why is it? I'll give you a clear answer. I spoke to Commissioner Gottlieb at the time at the FDA, and I was presenting him with all this evidence, all this scientific evidence on vaping. By the way, he used to own shares in a vaping shop that he was asked to get rid of during his confirmation hearing. So he understands the business side of it very well. The first remark and first comment, he said, well, you know, that's what you guys do in Europe. It doesn't make sense in the US. My clear answer to him was, why? Are your lungs different than mine? And silence. We had the SBA on the phone, we had OIRA on the phone, we had zero silence for 10 seconds. That just gives you an idea of how, I would say, I don't know how to say this word in English, secluded? No, or how self-centered our government is. They are not looking at data around the world, which is kind of weird because what's happening in cannabis, where's the data coming from? Israel? That's the only place where we can actually get real data right now. We're all looking at it as an industry. What's going to happen when we start going to the regulators and say, here's a study that was done over 5 years in Israel. Oh, their lungs are not the same, it doesn't work. That is shocking. And by the way, I told them I have dual citizenship, so my lungs are also half like yours. That didn't go well.
So I think you have the tobacco nicotine side, and it has a whole host of its own optics and also relevant issues in terms of distribution. You were the one that keyed me into that notion, which sort of explains some of the youth consumption issues. But it's pretty solidly separated from that of cannabis. But I mean, 6,900 smoke shops in New York City, you said? There's like maybe 5 dispensaries in New York City. I think it's 4. It's 4, right? Yeah, it's 4. One in the Bronx, 3 in Manhattan. But I think Staten Island's, Sativa.
Sativa, yeah.
Yeah, so Sativa in Brooklyn. So there's like, let's say there's 4, maybe 5. It's crazy that there's 6,900 smoke shops and 5, let's say, dispensaries. And so something needs to change. And Adam Goers from Columbia Care and the MCIA spoke to that. But basically, when it comes to the quote-unquote vaping crisis, you have the tobacco nicotine on one side, you have the cannabis on the other, which isn't to say that, okay, we don't have problems to worry about. Within the thread of cannabis, there is a multitude of things that are going on. There's, you said MCT, Dr. Shukit, who's the deputy director of the CDC, who's talking about vitamin E acetate. They obviously found that there's correlation. I don't think they went as far to say causation, but there's strong correlation. Where there's the potentiality of terpenes, that if you inhale terpenes, that there could be an issue. We talked about flavors, that could be an issue. And the word that I'm hearing is that it was sort of one bad batch, potentially, hopefully. But that being said, this shines a light on all of these things, what's going into all these products. What are your thoughts in terms of where do we go from here? What are the key learnings? Is there anything that you feel is more weighted than others to be probabilistically the main driver of the issue? Is it all of it? Like, what's your thought process?
I think there's two sides to that story. The vitamin E acetate, just to be clear, vitamin E is not dangerous for your lungs. The vitamin E acetate the vitamin E is carried in a carrier oil. That's what's dangerous, because the particle size when you're vaping of that carrier oil is what's obstructing the alveolus in the lungs. In general, any product that you're mixing to something that we all spend all our day saying, that everyone in the industry is saying, is natural, is a plant, comes from Mother Earth. Why the hell would we add anything into it? Why? Because we're trying to please consumers. And remember what I was saying about consumer-driven industry? Well, no. We need to be educating those consumers, looking at exactly what's in these products. Now, today, again, we don't have enough research for me to be able to say this is 100% what needs to be done, but we have a pretty good idea. Cannabis extracts, cannabis terpenes, and plant terpenes. That's it. Why are we adding MCT, PEG, VG? It makes no sense. And actually, it does make sense. It's a business sense, because you can sell a lot more and dilute it. I mean, that's what the black market does. So I think that those three ingredients are the core ingredients we should be using until we do some more research. And there are companies out there right now that are doing the research, that are trying to understand what, if they add one molecule to it, what's it going to do? And they're taking the time to do it. Those results won't be out until 2 or 3 years from now. But that's what we need. We need time, and we need authorization, and we need the ability to do this research. Now, that's more on the oil side. And of course, that goes with quality control, general manufacturing practices, and understanding exactly what's coming out of these products. One other aspect that makes it really, really hard to quantify, and I'm going to give you an example. I'm sorry if we're not allowed to vape here, but I'm still going to do it.
No vaping. No
Just
vaping.
to show you.
Oh, demonstration. There's obviously nothing in it.
I'm going to take a 2-second puff. See, very little vapor. I'm going to take another 2-second puff. That vapor was twice as big as the previous one. Those are 2-second puffs. How do you fit everyone's pulmonary inhalation capabilities? It's really hard. Again, there are standards for that. There's general puff regimes. Health Canada has even created a subsegment in the ISO standards of what's called an intense puffing regime for someone who's always puffing on it. So that's really, really important, is abiding by these standards that exist in other industries and that are doing the exact same thing that we do. The second aspect, and which is dear to our heart, of course, is the hardware. Today, we're not seeing within the vaping crisis a lot of fuss around the hardware, but the hardware is very, very important. We need to understand what's going in these products. What do all of the black market people do? They go on Alibaba, DHgate, they buy these cartridges that they're buying for 50 cents, $1, zero testing, nothing. That's dangerous. What's even more scary is that we have legitimate companies, licensed companies, that are buying en masse from China without knowing at all who the supplier of the stainless steel is, without knowing who the supplier of the ceramic is, without knowing who the supplier of the borosilicate glass is. No clue. Even worse, their Chinese manufacturer has no clue, hasn't audited. They just buy from the cheapest manufacturer they can get. This is a reality. We've been living it for 10 years. It's a reality of what's going on right now in the vaping hardware market. And I'm sorry, I have to put my sales hat on. This is one of the things that we've been trying to fight against. At the Blinc Group, we control the entire supply chain. We audit all of these raw material manufacturers, which is paramount to providing traceability and to be able to provide product recalls. If you look at any vaping device you have right now, does it have a serial number on it? It might have a model number. That's it. When was it made? When was it delivered? Who handled it? No damn clue. No one knows. You think that would be allowed in the pharma industry? In the beverage industry? In the food industry? No. Then why the hell are we doing it? Why does no one care about this? That's very, very important. One of the materials when phase 3 testing came in California, the main material at the time that was used by all the Chinese manufacturers, and yes, these products are all manufactured in China, and no, it is not possible to manufacture them in the US without tripling the price, just so you know. We can speak about that because I testified against Trump's tariff specifically for that.
You're going to China after this
And
event.
I'm flying to China literally in 3 hours. So it's really important to understand that the raw material that was used at the time was a material called H59. H59 is an alloy that contains 2.87% plus or minus 5% of lead. And people started complaining about leaching. Fortunately, those materials are used in nicotine vaping, but nicotine vaping doesn't make the heavy metals leach in the device. They're not corrosive enough. Terpenes, on the other hand, are. That's how we can find heavy metals after doing a lead test and letting the oil sit for 2 months in a cartridge. Now, the Chinese scrambled when this happened and started using another alloy called H59B2. This one contains 0.005% of lead. That allows the metal to be more malleable, so easier to work with. We've seen over years of testing that under 0.5% of lead, there is no leaching because it's too small of an amount. So that material is great. Now, a lot of companies out there are looking at medical devices and kitchenware. What's that made of? Stainless steel. It's actually called 304 stainless steel. There are a lot of other grades of stainless steel, but the most common one is 304. 304 stainless steel, everyone might think it's safer. But 304 stainless steel contains 18% chromium. And chromium is very, very toxic. Fortunately, and if you look up on Google, you're going to see some complaints from consumers about this. Fortunately, when you don't heat up stainless steel above 1,400 degrees Celsius, which is very, very hot, it doesn't leach. So that's why stainless steel is approved for medical devices. But there is always going to be something that people can nab at and say it's dangerous. This has been proven throughout history. I remember when I was a kid, everyone was saying olive oil is very, very safe, very, very healthy. And now people are saying if you have too much olive oil, you're going to die from cancer. Well, I think you're going to die from
Jenny's
cancer for
olive oil.
everything.
Not Jenny's olive oil.
So it's really important to understand all of these subtle differences. And I think that's what we're accomplishing with the Blinc group, is really getting people to understand that you need to do end-to-end compliance. And it's funny because we have a lot of LP clients in Canada. Now, everyone's saying the Canadian market is growing very slowly, but it's growing at a normal pace because the Canadian regulators are being, excuse the term, bitches. They're looking at every single line of every product. They're asking, and there's some over regulation on this. Sometimes they're asking for UL 8139 certifications for cartridges. UL 8139 is only for electrical components. There are no electrical components in a cartridge. But it's about education. They're growing slowly, but they're doing things the right way. No one in the US asks you for any certifications. I've never had any of my clients ask me, what is the grade of the stainless steel you're using? And that never happens in any other industry. So that's just going back to the vaping crisis. I think that's very, very important to understand. Is it's great that as an industry, maybe hardware is only 5% of what we're doing. Maybe the extracts is only 20%. And we have to recognize what we don't know. Go see people who know. Go see people who have done this, who have been doing this for 10 years, and get the information, because that is going to come back and bite everyone in the ass moving forward. What if we see that, again, I'm going to take the example of myrcene. What if we see that in 10 years, myrcene has killed 100,000 people, and we find the culprit? What are we going to say? Oh, we didn't know, we didn't do any research? Who's going to be responsible? We are, as an industry. We are going to be responsible. Class action lawsuits all over the place from all the consumers, especially in this country. They're going to be calling for it. We really need to get our act together. And again, this is one of the biggest pieces of advice I give to my friends, because I've always been an entrepreneur. I've never been an employee. And a lot of my friends are asking me, what is the single piece of advice you would give to someone who wants to start a company? My single piece of advice is know your limits, know what you don't know, and surround yourself with people who do know. And I think that's what, in our industry, sometimes we have trouble doing. And we try to work with people from all different places, which is great. That's what I love about this industry. But you have a lot of people from the marketing side, a lot of people from production side who are actually former illegal, and everyone's trying to fight internally, and nothing gets done, and everyone camps on their positions. We're an inclusive industry. We need to all be collaborating right now, and we need to all be understanding what's going on. Our biggest competitors on the commoditized product, because luckily we don't have any on the custom products and the R&D, our biggest competitors, we speak to them every week. We know what they're doing. We know, and we share information when we get it on safety of components. It's important to do that. It's important to know how to work together without giving away trade secrets, of course. But when we see one of our competitors doing something very, very wrong that's going to hurt the industry, we have to open our mouths. Sometimes we have clients that want to sue each other. I'm like, guys, isn't it already such a shitstorm right now in cannabis? You really want to show the entire media that we're already suing each other after 3 years of existence? Does that make sense? That does not make sense. So again, the message, share, research, and vet everyone that you're working with and every product that you're working with. I think that's one of the biggest learnings and lessons learned from this vaping crisis. Also, one last thing, if we had implemented, or if the regulator has implemented, like the labs used to tell me the regulator doesn't ask for it, the regulator has implemented at least a minimum of emissions testing, this entire CDC and FDA fiasco, taking 2.5 months to figure out what was going on, wouldn't have happened.
Cool. Thank you. So you heard it. Obviously, we don't want over-regulation, because then it goes to the illicit market, which is probably what would happen. So that's the caution to any legislators in the room or watching, is that it's important. But as you said, it's a consumer-driven industry, and ultimately people are going to do it either way. So if you just ban it, then they'll go to the illicit market, they'll go to the gray market. And that's, I think, all except for one, maybe two of the cases were illicit market and not legal market, which is a pretty high percentage. So we are well over time, but I hope you guys enjoyed this. Maybe 1 or 2 questions. Show of hands, are you guys up for questions? Cool, okay. Team in Irvine. Question is, what's your advice for consumers? And then in particular, does the sort of order of magnitude of your inhalation affect your health?
So I think the main advice for consumers is ask when you're buying it, so obviously we're talking about consumers who buy it from the legal market, ask the person who you're buying it from for their COAs, ask them
What's a COA?
Certificate of analysis on the product, and I think one of the biggest challenges is ask for COAs, and ask for COAs that have been done 30 days ago, not COAs, because that's what's happening in California. People put the product on the market. They do heavy metal testing, for instance, after 24 hours. The problem is leaching happens over time. So that same product that passed in 24 hours probably doesn't pass 60 days later. So, I mean, that's very, very important to understand how that was done. It comes down to trust as well. I mean, you're probably going to go to a bud tender who's probably not going to know who manufactures the hardware, what's the extraction technique, what kind of ISO certifications you have. But they should at least be able to give you the COAs and working with brands you trust. And don't hesitate to ask. That'll never hurt. One of the other part of the question is, does the hit you're taking and the length of that hit impact potential toxicity or of what you're vaping? 100% it does. 100%. That's why in certain states we have cutoff times on how you can inhale. In certain countries as well, in Europe, there's cutoff times that have been set up in regulation, because the more you hit a basic vaping device, and there are some devices that don't do this, but a basic vaping device, the more you pull on it, the more it's heating. So if you pull for 3 seconds, you're hitting 170 degrees C. If you pull on it for 4 seconds, you're all the way up to 196. If you pull on it for, I'm just putting out numbers. These are not exact numbers, or there's no ratio to them. But it really depends on the device, the material used, and everything. It depends on how you're vaping. If I have this product with the inside coal that's stainless steel, and I have the exact same product with that inside coal that's nichrome, stainless steel is going to take 2 seconds more to heat up to 170 degrees. So it even varies per product. Just going back to my example with China, this happened a year ago to a very big manufacturer. They replaced nichrome by stainless steel in the device because they found it cheaper. They found a batch cheaper, and they didn't tell the buyers here in the U.S. Whole batch was ruined because people had to pull on it longer, and hence they were burning it. So every single component has an impact, but of course, the more you pull on it, the more you're going to be burning products, and especially the terpenes, because they burn at lower levels.
Let's do one more question before we head over to Ribalta. Yep. The 3 compounds that should not be used in vapes?
No, that should be used. And again, disclaimer here: this is we don't have enough research to be able to prove what I'm saying, but empirically, and given the research and what we've seen throughout the years, is just the cannabis extract itself, cannabis terpenes and plant terpenes, and there are even some plant terpenes that have a lot of allergens in them that you shouldn't be using. So part of the regulation should be explaining to people what allergens are in there.
Arnaud from the Blinc group. This is CannaGather, the Vaping Crisis.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you very much.
Free pizza at Ribalta. Come with me. It's you can't see it on the screen anymore, but it's 48 East 12th Street.